Hey, I'm Todd. Welcome to Request Metrics. In this episode, we'll configure our common Linux servers with Ansible.
The fuck is this?
We've got our SSL certs, we've got our SSH keys, we can communicate with Ansible to the box. So now it's time to do some more Ansible work. One of the first things that we want to do that we learned in Track.js is that these Linux boxes have a series of sort of prerequisites that you almost want to get done right away no matter what. And so when you've got a situation like that in Ansible, Ansible has a tool already called a role. So if you want all of your boxes, say you've got a dozen Linux boxes and you want them all to have the same kind of stuff done to them, one of the ways that you can ensure that they all do that, regardless of which playbook is run, is by using a role. And then you can, in each playbook, say, I want them to be part of this role or that role. And so I think the goal of the day is we want to actually make a Linux common role. So there's going to be common things that we do to all of the servers that we set up.
Yep, and I guess it's technically sort of premature since we only have one type of machine, right? But I think this one, plus we can get it out of our main playbook file then.
Yeah, and so some of it is really just like a code hygiene in a lot of ways, right? Like it's just, we want to make sure that this is sort of organized the way that an Ansible project should be. So by convention, the roles folder sits at the top level, and it's called roles. And so we're going to make a new folder in there, and we're going to call it Linux Common. Okay, and so then in here, oh, interesting.
Yeah, they do. This is a new thing in the latest .NET code.
That's kind of fun. And so then we actually need. Oh, how do I make a new folder in here? Oh, this is terrible.
Wait, what?
What does it do? I don't understand.
Wait, do you have two Linux commons?
Well, yeah.
I think you do.
What the fuck? Are you fucking kidding me?
Maybe try rename. Try rename. Which one does it rename?
Toggle. I just want to see. Watch here. Controls should render folders in a compact form. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh. Jesus fuck.
I mean, it's clever, I guess, but it's sort of disorienting, isn't it?
That is unconscionable. Like you take a paradigm that people have used for 30, 40 years now.
I don't remember that.
I feel like an old man. Somebody moved my cheese. Okay, anyways, good gravy. That was brutal. So we've got our main YAML, right? And so right now, if we were to try and run this role, it wouldn't do anything, but we should probably make it do stuff.
And so let's just list out with a comment maybe the things we want to put in there.
So I know we want to do, one of the things, like when we are, that's not very, see, look at this. Why is this an autocomplete? It's a comment, man. Don't, anyways.
It might be auto-completing things it knows about Ansible.
Yeah, you can just stop that nonsense too. One of the things that we like to have is a series of debugging tools that don't come on Ubuntu installations by standard, but when stuff is on fire and you're SSH into that box, they're nice to have. So we want to put some of those in there, right? And we want to install and configure the firewall, I think, because right now, like, it's got just whatever the defaults are.
Yep, which I think is like allow all or something.
So another thing that we do is that we notify ourselves with an email. Anytime anybody SSHs into one of these boxes, we want to know about it.
Let's see. Oh, SSH cert-based op.
Okay, so
we disallow interactive password entering for SSH logins.
Okay.
Just sort of like on any user.
Yep. One thing we need to do is ensure NTP is enabled and syncing time, because you don't think that time is important until your server skews by like 3 hours and everything is fooked. So we definitely want to do that. And then the last thing that we run into specifically because of OVH, and different hosts may not have this problem, but these are physical machines, like real physical machines. And so they actually have different power profiles. And so one of the things that we want to do, because we're not paying for the electricity, OVH is, we want to ensure that these babies run hot all the time, and so that they are in like performance mode. So CPU doesn't throttle for performance energy reasons. I like the environment, but I want my servers running fast. So
this enables us to have fewer servers, which in turn saves the environment.
And so in the last one, we actually tested with TrackJS, and it was like double-digit percentages faster.
Is there any other like weird security patches that we need to do?
There's what I call my list low-effort SAC mitigation.
What was SAC again?
I cannot even remember. With goofy
TCP SAC. Now, I just want to make a quick like kindergartner comment. Like when you hear SAC, like I mean, like a SAC panic. Like what? I mean, okay. I'm sorry. I had to. Okay, so what is this?
Yeah, this is the one where you could change like the windows or something. Yeah, segment size.
You could trigger a kernel panic in system.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just
like bizarre window sizes.
So it's a denial of service, but probably not an RCE, right?
So the goal is we just, as I recall, reduce the maximum window size to like reasonable and probably will never see values.
Okay.
To stop it from happening.
Perfect. Well, so let's crank through some of these. So let's talk about the debugging tools first. How about?
Yeah. And that one's not that exciting.
No, so I'm gonna do a little Julia Child magic here. So we actually have two that we like. So HTOP, if you've never seen it, is awesome. It's like just a really good CPU memory load monitor. This kind of got like an in-terminal user interface.
Yeah, it's for the UI people among us.
Yeah, the Windows users, right? Those of us that we use GUIs as our crutch. And the other one that we install, and this is really just for kind of performance issues, is sysstat. And the reason we want it is because it has a tool in it called iostat, which lets you figure out how much thrashing are your disks doing. Yeah,
and hopefully that's not a problem on request metrics, but it has been a problem on TrackJS.
Yeah. The next thing that we want to do is install and configure the firewall and just make sure we lock these boxes down pretty tight and just make sure that there's not any sort of obvious ways for people to get in. One other thing to mention though here is we like to name all of our commands. So this name is not strictly necessary. You actually don't need this. You could just put apt right up here. The nice thing about doing a name here is that when we run this playbook, you'll actually see this in the output of like which step is running. So it just kind of gives you, it's like a comment almost, and just kind of gives you a little bit more information about
That's a good clarification, because I wasn't sure if like install was like this magic comment or
so
like this command.
Yeah. This could be called anything you want. It's literally just for output purposes and to kind of help you remember it. The magic bit here, so like this is basically doing an apt get install.
Right, so name is like...
And so here we're using apt, and so these are all different modules in Ansible parlance. So when we looked at that big list of all modules, apt is one of them. So you can see here, we're doing the firewall with this. But here on 12, we're actually using the UFW module. So now that it's installed, oh, this is helpful. Look, I can go see this documentation.
Oh, how convenient.
Oh, I don't care to. But, and so here we're doing a couple of different things. We're allowing OpenSSH. And so then the other thing that we're doing is denying basically everything else.
So when this thing gets a web server installed on it down the road, we're going to need to add another UFW to allow Nginx to open ports, correct?
Exactly. I'm going to jump ahead in our list a little bit. So while we're dealing with firewalls and stuff,
might as well move it up there. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, just because the mitigation for SAC is actually a UFW-based thing, I'm going to just go ahead and paste in what we had before. And so basically, the other thing to note, this is pretty cool. The UFW module knows how to operate on the UFW firewall in Ubuntu. But sometimes we want to actually, like, this particular module couldn't do the different stuff that we wanted it to do, right? So we actually wanted to do an IP rule. And so we actually have to actually change the UFW, like it has this before rules config file that you can make. And so Ansible here has this block and file module, and it's really cool. So when what it'll do is it'll make a commented block in the file that it then knows how to like change, and that's how it can make it like a repeatable action. So it doesn't just add this block, it adds this block inside of a section that it knows about. It's kind of designated with a specific Ansible friendly delimiter. And so that way, like, it can be idempotent. It knows it doesn't need to add it again if we run it a second time.
And you can actually change it.
Yep.
So if you change it, like, oh, this block isn't the same as it was before, I'll update it.
Yeah. Other thing to note here, and we'll get into this in a second, right? You can notify different handlers, they're called. And so we actually have a couple of different handlers, and one of those is listening for this. And whenever this is notified, it will sort of reload the firewall to update the rules.
Yeah, and again, the reload UFW is just the name we gave it. So the handler could be anything. We need to make a handler for that.
Yeah, and so to make a handler, it's pretty easy. And now that we don't collapse our stupid folders in Visual Studio Code, it's much easier. So by convention, it's in the handlers folder. And so you can see Visual Studio Code at least got this part right. Like with the Ansible tooling that I've installed, like it knows this is a magic folder of stuff, right? The one thing I don't love
No, I don't like that either.
Everything in these folders is a main. But
yeah, and so once you got enough mains open, it gets a bit much.
So here we can say, so this name needs to match the name here. In
we have a magic string.
It is very magical. So then Ansible's gonna say, oh, there should be a reload UFW handler. Let me go see what it does. Okay, here's what action it actually takes. This is kind of common Ansible convention. You'll see a lot of this state, and so state could be started or stopped. Or in this case, there's a reloaded, which means it'll bounce it.
So why wouldn't we just reload UFW at the end of that task directly? Why introduce this whole concept of a handler?
You could. The problem is, so if you go back there, if you had a new thing, like, so if we had another thing called -name reload UFW, right? Mm-hmm. It would reload it on every run because it wouldn't, by default, know whether this block got updated or not, because once it's there and Ansible realizes it's the same, it's a no-op, right? But then the next thing doesn't know.
Notify is clever. It only will trigger when change has happened.
And so you can, with enough gymnastics, you can actually store off variables that you could use in the next thing. But then now you're doing all those checks and stuff. Also, so you could actually get the result and then next line check.
Aren't handlers all notified at the end of the run too?
The other thing is handlers are notified at the end, which is good and bad.
Yeah, because if you need it reload instantly, you might have to reload it manually. But if you just want to save up all the different reloads, like if maybe you're doing 3 things that need to reload the firewall, it'll just wait till the very end and reload.
Yep, and I think the place we'll see this is with Nginx. So if you have 5 operations that change this and change that in Nginx, at the very end, it'll just do it once.
Okay, so let's see. What do we want to do next? So one of the things that we want to do, and I'm going to jump the gun again a little bit, because this guy's a little bit more involved, is we want to ensure cert-based auth only. So we don't want any passwords. And so one of the ways we can do that, let me back out here, disable password-based auth through SSH. And so as you can see here, we specify it in the SSH server config. So this is another Ansible concept that's probably actually worth talking about. So these templates are Python Jinja2 templates. And again, because we're in a role, we want to make this, and J2 is the file extension for Jinja. But we've got our handlers folder, we've got our tasks folder. Another folder that we can have is a templates folder.
Yeah, as a commentary, this is my least favorite part of Ansible. It's I like the roles, but you do get so many folders.
So by convention, we're referencing an sshd_config file. With no path, it is just going to look directly into the top of this templates directory. So I'm going to make this guy. And then I'm going to actually copy and paste the one we use from Track.js. Now this guy has a bunch of stuff in it. Okay, cool. So then we've got another handler here, right? And so we need a handler that does restart SSH, right? So this is the other one that we've got. And so we got to go back over here. And he's kind of the same deal. Matches the same string name. And then here we kind of use it. This guy had his own reload capability in the UFW module. This one we're actually using the service module and just telling it, hey, the name of the service is SSH, make sure it's restarted. What is next? We want to do, so this guy's done. SAC is mitigated here. All right.
Which do you want to do? You want to do the login or the NTP? NTP is pretty quick.
Yeah, should we do that one real quick? All right. So this guy's real easy. All right, you ready for this? So again, we just say, hey, we're going to install NTP, which makes sure, hey, NTP is present. And then we just make sure that it's enabled and started.
Do we know what remote service it's using? Or do we care?
What do you mean?
Oh,
like who is it talking to? Who does it sync time with?
We just let it use whatever it's going to use.
I don't know how it figures it out. It's got like a whole pool that it picks from.
Okay.
Let's do the CPU one, how about?
Yeah.
Okay, so this guy's actually a little bit more on the involved side. So the way that we did this, apparently, I'm gonna just, can I pull this from one to the other? Look at that. So we basically do this. This is like a thing that we want to run.
That's the effect of the entire thing we're doing, yeah.
Yep. So Jordan, I noticed though that in Track.js at least, we're copying that file over and then running it. Is there a reason we do it that way?
Yes.
Do you remember what that reason was?
So we copy it over there, but however, we're not going to reboot the box, right? So it needs to run somehow. So we run it the first time, right?
Gotcha. We can't just run this as a command though with Ansible?
Well, so that's the trick is, without, as I recall, there was like a few ways to do this, and there wasn't a stunningly easy way to like set the setting permanently. So if you reboot that box, it'll go back to the other governor.
Okay.
And there's some ways to do it. However, they felt sort of invasive.
Okay.
So like, well, I know how to run a script.
Yep.
So the trick is we upload the script and run it because it's never been run before. And then you'll note that the next step is we do a cron job.
Yes. Oh,
We'll see that there's a special one.
Yes. Okay. One moment here. Let me get this pulled up.
But it is funny. There's a lot of gymnastics for running that line 15.
See, and so this is where, though, Todd, I will say Windows has its problems, which I agree with. But there is a lot of faffing with Linux-based systems, too. Oh, my goodness.
This is just the equivalent of you guys messing with the registry, though.
It's the same issue.
It is, yeah. Yes.
But at least the registry would stay once you set it.
Okay, so we're going to copy that script over, and then we're going to run the script on boot. So here we're using cron to do this. This is cool. So this is setting up a cron job called CPU performance. It runs this guy every time it reboots.
With a special time.
Well,
yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah,
actually.
so that's a special like thing in the Ansible module.
And I see. And so then here we've got this performance script first run.
We're not going to reboot.
I see. So now we're going to need another handler here. Boom. It says run the script when it's first installed. So we install it, we run this handler, which will just bang against this guy. And then we're going to set up a cron job, so every other time he reboots, he runs. That's pretty dope. Okay, so the last thing that we want to do is we want to actually like be notified when somebody logs in, right? And so that guy, where does he live in Track.js world? Ah, here he is. I see him. So I'm just going to copy and paste this bad boy. Okay, so interesting here. So even though this dude is in Linux Common, he's actually looking for this file. I think we should put this file in the files.
Yeah,
I agree.
I wonder why we did that.
Because I probably was being fast and loose. Is usually what happens. Okay, so we've got this login notify.ssh. I don't want to spend a lot of time going over this file because we can tweak it a little bit, right? So it's just a bash script. And this thing is run every time somebody SSHs in, right? And so there's this PAM type variable, and I'm checking it to make sure it's not closed session. The alternative is open session. Before this, though...
We don't need that at all.
We don't need this right for now. So I'm just going to punt. Yeah. You're okay with removing that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so then we're going to say the subject of... So this is actually building the email. right? And so these are magic PAM variables that come in with the shell. And then we just curl. Look at that. Boom. Rip it.
Yep.
And so then we go back here. So the first thing we do, and so I'm just going to do this, right?
Yep.
And so then he goes into the Etsy SSH folder with
He gets
execute
executable.
permissions. Yep. Then we add.
It's funny to me that sometimes you use you use the letter mode and sometimes you use the number mode.
Oh, we're all over
Depends
the
how we're
place.
feeling that day, Todd.
I actually always prefer the letter mode because the numbers they don't make any sense. What is a 4? Who knows? Like, that's dumb.
Really, but Todd, the determiner for that is like how specific we had to get the permissions to get it to work, basically.
Also, what was the best Stack Overflow answer that we got? because if it said 444, we just use that. If it said plus X, we use that, right? So,
Also, in this case, you're copying the script into Etsy, whereas in the other one, you just dropped it in the root profile.
yeah, this was trying to be just a little bit better steward. You could probably put it anywhere. The one thing is I was a little bit worried about permissioning and stuff, because then what happens, right, is we actually have to say, hey, in this PAMD SSHD file, hey, so this is actually an interesting thing. So you can have a session required or a session optional. And if it's required, it will exec this file. And if that file fails for any reason, it will not let the person in. So like if you were going to do some sort of secondary auth check with some sort of third-party system or whatever, you could theoretically use this to do it.
So like if a return
We
value
really
or
would not
something.
want Mailgun being offline to deny our ability.
Exactly, which is why this is an optional thing, right? Great. So that, I think, is actually most of the stuff that we wanted to do. Is that so? And so look, now it's nice and collapsed inside of its little roll.
But now we should run it and see where we screwed up.
We should run it because I am certain we screwed up in some way. So here we are.
Hold on, we can't run it yet.
Oh,
We gotta go back to our. We gotta go back to the actual playbook we're running.
we gotta use
and
the
include
roll,
it.
man.
Ah.
Use the roll. It's like
Yeah,
using
so
the
above
force.
tasks probably.
Okay, so we've got remote user. Okay, so we can just put roles anywhere we want, right?
Yep.
And so then here, you can just specify them by name.
Yeah, so Ansible knows that the roles should be in the roles folder.
Okay,
Yeah.
so now we're gonna run this task that we did. Okay, so we're gonna do what? We're gonna do an Ansible playbook, right, against the dev inventory. We're gonna do RM YAML, and just because it's like ingrained in my head.
Even Python, not the fastest to run
Yeah,
the
this
first time.
dynamic language is quite a softball. Okay. So let's see what happens here. I am not certain this is going to work very well.
Gathering the facts.
Okay, so here comes HTOP, baby. This should be fairly quick. And so here you can see why we put those names in here, right? Because they kind of show up here too. Oh, it looks like HTOP was already on that box. So anytime it's yellow for change, it means it did something. If it says okay, it means it was already on the box, or like it didn't.
Yes.
It was a no-op essentially.
Yeah, so if we ran this again, theoretically it'd just say okay for everything.
Yeah, so like NTP was already on there. It looks like.
No, it installed it, but it must have auto-started as part of the installer.
Oh, and then here come the handlers here at the end.
Yeah, so here's the handlers, yep, and so there we go. So now if we were to run this again, we would expect to see way more green, right, as we do this. Like
Yeah,
it should just
theoretically.
so now we can see like it's not doing anything, it's checking first before it does the work.
Yep, and actually a lot of times when I'm writing Ansible scripts, I do this to prove that like it knows what's going on.
And so then
right? 'Cause, like if it keeps changing, you're like, okay, you don't know what's going on. Why don't you know that you already did it?
You know what would be kind of a cool thing to add to it? Is to change the official host name to its DNS entry.
Oh yeah. Does Ansible
Just because even the email that we got says that
I know.
somebody logged into DNS5 or whatever, it'd be nice to know, like, what is that?
Is that a host name? Hold on, go up. Is that a host name module?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so the parameter is name. Yes. Okay, you guys want to do it?
Yeah, let's do it.
So this is actually a really good one. There might be some faffing here, but
We have to do like dynamic because we have to like look up the host name.
yep. So Jordan, do you know how to do this off the top of your head or no?
We should put this at the top.
So Ansible has a bunch of built-in variables.
Azure.
Ansible has a bunch of built-in variables. One of which is the host you're talking to. Now, do I know that one off the top of my head? Probably not. ES cluster.
I mean, there's got to like this has got to be super easy. Here we go. And
So
it looks like inventory host name.
Yeah, so that's going to be a fully qualified host name. Is that okay?
Like, so it'd be dev rm1 requestmetrics.net.
Yep. Should we just try it to see if it works?
Yeah, let's see what happens.
Sorry.
That's it.
It wanted the name argument. I wasn't sure if we
Okay,
could
so
just...
then it would have worked. So what's interesting is if you have a template first, the YAML doesn't know what to do with it. Like, sort of, it's not clear what you want. So,
I got an alert from Ansible that time.
Cool.
Oh, did you
do
an
is-
email?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Maybe it just took a while. Maybe the email is just... Okay, we changed the host name. Right, so if I'm on this box here, which again, how do I make this? So first of all, let's see this. Whoa, look at it, it updated it already, actually.
Interesting. So try it.
So let's...
I want to say log
So
in again.
log out, log back in, and let's make sure that the
Maybe log into a new window. Here. Can't see it yet. What's happening?
He set his font too big, and now it's off the screen.
Don't you worry.
Hey, look at that.
That worked.
It even shows the beginning, the subdomain.
Check this out. We're...
Bam.
That's pretty
That's cool.
sweet. That's pretty
Worse.
fucking sweet.